Hi everybody. Some of you will remember me as Bulletproof Gill, but yes, I am one of the facilitators from Synergy, and I thought that it would be appropriate that I shared with you, especially during this time of anxiousness, vulnerability, fear that the whole world is facing. I thought it would be appropriate for me to share my apps for life in terms of how you could use them to possibly use them to just get through the next trying times that are ahead of us. And when we talk about these apps of mine, and some of you that might know about them, those of you that don't, they are apps of resilience. And often when we talk about the word resilience, people will think about it in terms of being something that you need to be during hard times, tough times, bad times. But you know what? You also sometimes need to be resilient during good times. You think about it, maybe most of you or some of you might be parents. Just think of that happy moment when you heard you were going to be a parent. The joy, the love, the anxiousness, yes, of a new little life coming into the world. It's a wonderful thing. But my gosh, you needed to be resilient. Some of you who've got new jobs, increases and new positions and new responsibilities. Those are all wonderful things, but it also comes with having to be resilient. Also, when we talk about being resilient, people talk about bouncing back. Well, that's what dictionaries talk about. Now, yes, we all know that we do bounce back, but if you just think about that favorite pair of pajama pants of yours, which I'm sure are going to be used a lot over the next few weeks. And that eventually, over time, those favorite jammy pants, that elastic doesn't quite go back to as tight as it used to be. Well, that's the thing about resilience. It's about being able to make yourself resilient in terms of good things and bad things, where you need to go the extra mile, where you don't need to just bounce back. You need to be able to bounce forward. We need to know how we can see what is in our paths, what is going to be approaching us, and how we can be moving forward. So when we look at resilience, we also look at the words being vulnerable. And vulnerable, it's just the very word just sums it up, doesn't it? Being vulnerable basically means that we are in a situation where we are facing attack. It's fear, basically. And all my apps, in fact, that I'm going to be sharing with you come from this word vulnerable. Because when we are vulnerable, these are things that we fear. And if we look at their four basic states of being vulnerable, which is really the unknown, isn't it? The fear of the unknown. The first one is physical. The closer the danger, the more terrified you are. So that's where you shell yourself up and find all kinds of ways to protect yourself from this physical danger. Another very real one is economic vulnerability. Another very real reality right now. Am I going to be getting an income? Is that income going to be regular? So once again, we're sitting in a very, very vulnerable, unknown situation. A big one too is social, and social comes from things like, families that aren't able to communicate, groups, teams, unstable leadership. These are things that all come into play in terms of being socially vulnerable. And right now, yes, we are all socially vulnerable in terms of the pandemic that has hit the world. The last one, or the last category of being vulnerable, is attitudinal. Now, I'm a massive champion of being optimistic, and it's difficult to remain optimistic, especially during tough and trying times. But we all know ourselves that those negative people, those people that are always seeing that glass half empty, or saying it can't be done, or, oh, Jill, I've tried that, and it doesn't work. It's about changing that attitude. So what I'm going to do, and I'm really hoping that my 5 apps are going to be able to help you, especially during this time, not just to bounce back, but to bounce forward and use this time to be reflecting on who you are, where you're at. You see, the other thing before I share these apps with you is when we talk about adversity. We've all got adversity. We've all got problems. We've all got hardships in our lives. The problem is that you need to own your own adversity. Don't compare it to anybody else's. I love in my workshops to invite delegates and people to just come and just throw all their adversities and all their problems into the front of the room. What a pleasure that would be. But there's one proviso. You need to take someone else's problems home with you. And I promise you now, I'd much rather take my own problems home than somebody else's. So that's what we need to bear in mind. Please don't look at someone and go, oh, they're much worse than me, or I'm much worse than them. Everybody is unique. Everybody is different. So please think about that whilst I share my apps in terms of what you are going through right now. Not anybody else, you. Let's start off with my first app. And the first app I downloaded during my journey on having to be resilient with so many hardships that I was facing was courage. Now, courage is very, very different to bravery. You see, brave people do a lot of things. Right now, we've got a lot of brave nurses and medical care people out there. But I promise you now, they're brave, but they're also very courageous and wise because they take precautions. And that is the difference between courage and bravery. Courage comes from the heart. And courage means that you have got as much knowledge as you possibly can about a certain issue. So right now, there are certain situations that different communities are faced with. You need to be taking as much of that information and how it relates to you, your family, your business, your teams. And you need to now digest everything you've got there for you to be able to be managing in the near future. Knowledge is power. The more you know something, so strip it down. Find out absolutely everything that you need to know about whatever it is that you're facing right now. And don't say, oh, I've tried that and I've looked at that, and as much as you possibly can. The more you have, the better you've got to deal with things. So you can say, all right, that is a bad idea, and I won't use that, but this is a jolly good idea, and this will work for me. You see, the other thing is often remedies work for one person and not necessarily for another. So you need to be finding out what it is that's going to work for you so that you can walk that journey from the heart with that love and being courageous to know that, yes, you might be absolutely terrified, but you're armed with courage. You're armed with all this knowledge so that you're confident. You know yourself, when you really, really studied hard for an exam and you go out there and you know that you're going to nail it. Why? Because you're armed with all that knowledge and you prepared yourself for it. So that's what courage is too. It's about being prepared to take on this challenge that is facing you. The second app that I'd like you to consider is tenacity. Now, yes, a big word, and dictionaries describe describe tenacity as never giving up. And that's true. If you try and just imagine that little Duracell bunny that just never stops going, that is what tenacity is within each of us. It's that battery that just keeps us going. Because you know what? If you've got a dream and you've got something that you want to accomplish and you've got your goals, firstly, please understand that it's not just going to be smooth sailing. Because if that's what you're thinking, well, you're in for a big, big surprise. In terms of tenacity, in terms of moving forward in your life, you need to understand that there are going to be some pebbles. There's, in fact, going to be some boulders, and there could be some jolly big potholes. And you need to know that, yes, you may fall down. You may even find a tenacious person in a heap on the floor with blood and sweat and tears. Don't be alarmed. They're just resting, recharging those batteries. So please know whatever path it is that you've set from your courage app and know where you're going, know that there's going to be a problem on the way. There will be challenges. There's going to be things that come along that are going to say, oh, need to get back to the drawing board. Maybe we need to use plan B instead of plan A that we had scheduled in our courage app planning. So tenacity really is about never giving up, but also being kind to yourself and making sure that you are going to be doing it and not just alone. So don't be stubborn. No person that has won the resilience race has done it by themselves. You need your tribe. You need your village. You need support. So find out exactly what it is on this journey that you're going to be taking so that you are going to be tenacious and you are going to win it at the end, even though you may have a few bruises to show for it. The third app is an app that I need to refresh quite often, and that is patience. Now, there's two parts of patience. And the first one I'd like to especially share with you today is I'd like you to just sit back for a moment and think, when last did you actually just give yourselves a pat on the back and say, you know what? I'm absolutely jolly awesome. Look what I've got. Look what I've achieved. Yeah, you're probably thinking really hard as to when you actually were so kind to yourself. You see, at the end of the day, I bet you right now, the way you speak to yourself, you would never dream of speaking to anybody else. So that is what I'd like you to just consider for a moment, is being kind to yourself, being patient with yourself. Instead of saying, oh, when this is over, or when this module is over, when we finished Q2, or we finished Q3, when we finished this year, when I've lost another kilogram, when I can do this, when I've done this. That's always what we're thinking about. When. We're not being present. We're not thinking now. But the patience thing as well is going back to time and management of time, isn't it? We can't manage time. We can't slow time down. We can't speed it up. So it's about taking a deep, big breath and changing your attitude during the time, especially during adversity, especially whilst you're waiting for something to happen. I used to talk about, or I do talk about in my workshops, and I sum up patience in just 2 words: home affairs. It's about our attitude going to home affairs that actually gets our blood pressure going. So I'd like you to just maybe not think about home affairs in this instance, but once again, think about the situation that the world is in right now and where you personally are in right now. And what are you going to do with your attitude during this time? And watching your health levels and your blood pressure levels. So, my 4th app is the acceptance app. And yes, it's about accepting things that you cannot change. It's such an ancient adage, but I don't understand why people continue to fight it so. But now we also need to remember, when we do accept things that we cannot change, this means that we have exhausted every possible thing, opportunity, resource, action, to make whatever the result is going to be better for us. So therefore, we can't be doing the acceptance with whatever. We need to actually be accepting it with grace and accepting it with acceptance, to say, you know what, I have exhausted every single other opportunity, every single other resource. I've tried everything I possibly could do to try and get an increase or a more time on a deadline or get more assistance on something. I've tried everything. And you know what? I can't. I really have exhausted everything. And now I need to say, okay, I accept. And I need to move on, but as I said, with a smile. And not sitting there with resentfulness, because that is not going to get us anywhere. The very last app, which to me is probably one of the most important apps, is faith, ladies and gentlemen. And you see, faith actually starts with you. And faith starts with you understanding what you are capable of. Because you know what? If you're going to start the day by going, you know what, this is going to be a bad day, guess what? You're probably going to have a bad day. So you need to be able to firstly look back at yourself and see where you've come from, where you have actually used maybe these apps in the past, or not even my apps for that matter, where you've actually gone through some type of adversity and you've come through, yes, maybe a bit battered, but you've come through triumphantly. Look back at those occasions and see, what have I done? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? Learn from those things. And being able to go out there and believe in yourself, to know that you can go out there and that you can conquer it. Because believe me, if you don't believe in yourself, who else is going to believe in you? So it really does have to start with you. And I think you'll understand and see how these 5 apps actually do work very closely together, especially in terms of adversity. Being able to be resilient so that we can bounce forward, because our lives are going to be changed forever. after this pandemic. People are going to have to think differently, do things differently, work differently. But most of all, it starts with you, in terms of deciding how you're going to take this challenge and this adversity that you are faced with, along with the rest of the world. But it starts with you believing in yourself. Thank you very much for listening to me, and don't ever forget to fly. Thank you.